There are 15 vegetables you can plant just once and eat from for years, the way you would a fruit tree. Imagine walking into your garden a single time, setting a few plants in the ground, and then watching them come back every spring on their own, with no seed trays, no digging over the beds, no starting from nothing each season. It sounds too good to be true, but nature keeps a few of these secrets, and our grandparents knew every one of them. And there is a 15th plant, the one I am building you toward, that you dig into the ground one time, and it will still be handing you fresh spears 20 springs from now. 20 years of food from a single planting. Hold that plant in your mind, friend, because everything we sow today counts down to it. For most of a lifetime, the garden has been sold to you as hard, endless labor, buying new seed every spring, raising it from nothing, and doing the whole weary round again come next year. But that is not how our forebears fed themselves. They leaned on plants that came back on their own, faithful as an old apple tree. We did not lose that way of gardening because it failed us. We got sold a packet of seed instead, over and over, and a plain word first. A few of these must be cooked before you eat them, and I will tell you which. I'm Brother Benedict. 40 years I've kept my monastery's herb garden and vegetable beds. This is history, an old craft, not medical advice, so never eat a plant you cannot name for certain, and cook the ones I flag. If you like growing more food with less work, the plant once and eat forever way our grandparents gardened, give this a subscribe. It's free, and it helps an old monk keep this garden going. Now, let me show you what the old brothers wrote down. Number 15 is Malabar spinach, the climber that never quits. This is no ordinary spinach. Instead of growing low and fading fast in the heat, Malabar spinach climbs, its glossy leaves spiraling up a trellis or a fence into a living green curtain, and it stays tender and giving through the very peak of summer, when your ordinary spinach has long bolted and given up. It is rich in iron and vitamin A, the leaves thick and a touch slippery, fine for soups and stews. Once you have it, the vines seed themselves, and even a frost that knocks them back cannot keep them from climbing again when the warmth returns. Your test this season, give it a pole or a fence to climb, and pick from the bottom up. But number 14 is called the miracle tree, and that is next. Number 14 is moringa, which much of the world calls the miracle tree, and it is a true survivor. Set it once and it grows fast, sometimes 10 feet in a single season, and it never stops giving. Nearly every part serves you, the leaves above all, tender and dense with goodness, tasting somewhere between spinach and green tea, carrying protein and iron, and vitamins besides. In hard lands it is grown against hunger itself, for it thrives where softer crops fail, shrugging off drought and poor soil, and springing back after every cutting, as though it could not be stopped. The more you trim it, the more it gives. In a cold climate, keep it in a pot you can bring in for winter. Your test, plant it in your warmest, sunniest corner, and harvest the leaves by the handful each week. But number 13 brings both beauty and a famous drink to the garden, and that is next. Number 13 is sorrel, the tangy one some call roselle or Jamaican sorrel. It earns its place twice over, for it is as handsome as an ornamental flower, with deep red stems and bright crimson cups, yet every part of it is food. The leaves carry a sharp, lemony tang, grand in a soup or a salad, and those red cups make the famous sweet tart drink rich in vitamin C. What makes it behave like a fruit tree is how easily it seeds itself and returns, and how cutting it back only brings it up stronger next season. It loves the sun and the heat and asks for little but good drainage and room to show its colour. Your test, grow a few plants and dry the red cups for a winter drink. But number 12 plants itself, one step at a time, and that is next. Number 12 is the Egyptian walking onion, and this plant has a character all its own. As it grows, it forms little clusters of bulbs, not underground, but up at the top of its stalks, and when those grow heavy, the stalk bends down, touches the soil, and roots itself, growing a brand new plant a step away. That is why they call it the walking onion, for it strolls across your garden a little further every year. Set it once, and it never stops multiplying, and every part is good eating, the underground bulb, the green stem, and the little top bulbs, all mild and true with that perfect onion bite. It laughs at drought and cold alike. Your test: plant a few bulbs and simply let them walk. But number 11 feeds you leaf and root both, and that is next. Number 11 is the sweet potato, and it is a triple gift. Most folk grow it for the sweet roots below, but the vines above sprawl across the soil like a living carpet, shading out the weeds and holding the moisture in, and those heart-shaped leaves are food themselves, cooked like a softer, sweeter spinach. Once you plant it, you have set a wheel turning that need never stop, for even after you dig the roots, a small tuber or a cutting left behind will sprout again when the warm rains return. It wants only loose soil, sun, and a little water, and the more room you give it, the more it rewards you. Your test: save one small tuber from your harvest to start the whole cycle again. But number 10 thrives where every other crop drowns, and that is next. Number 10 is taro, sometimes called cocoyam, a root that behaves like a fruit tree beneath the soil. Its broad, heart-shaped leaves catch the light like green sails and feed the thick, starchy roots below, roots that are creamy and faintly nutty and have been a staple across Africa, Asia, and the islands of the Pacific for ages. Its great gift is that it thrives in the wet, boggy corners where most vegetables rot and fail, so it turns your worst drained ground into a larder. Leave a few of the little side roots in the earth at harvest, and it comes again next season on its own. But hear me plainly, friend. Taro must always be well cooked before eating, never raw, for raw it will sting the mouth fiercely. Your test: plant it in your dampest spot where nothing else will grow. But number 9 gives you one of the finest, gentlest flowers in the world, and that is next. Number 9 is arrowroot, the quiet achiever. At a glance it is just another leafy tropical plant, but hidden under those lush leaves lie smooth white roots that make one of the finest and most easily digested flowers there is, so gentle it was long fed to the sick and the very young, and naturally free of gluten. It is a true perennial, and once it settles in, the underground stems multiply season upon season, so you take what you need and leave a few behind to return without fail. It loves the humid, shady spots where other crops struggle, and it does your soil a kindness besides, its roots loosening hard-packed ground so air and water reach down deep. Your test: tuck it into a shady, moist corner and let it multiply. But number 8 is the great survivor of them all, and that is next. Number 8 is cassava, a plant that does not merely grow but endures. Push its cuttings into the ground, and it thrives even through poor soil and dry seasons that finish off other crops. And beneath the earth, it forms thick, starchy roots that keep fresh underground for months, waiting patiently until you are ready. It asks almost nothing, no fancy care, no rich feeding, just a stem, a little water and sun. And within 8 to 12 months, you have a full harvest, with new plants springing up from any pieces you leave behind. Even the leaves are food when cooked. And that word cooked matters greatly here, friend, for cassava must always be properly peeled and well cooked before eating, never raw. Your test: plant a few stem cuttings in your poorest ground and be amazed. But number 7 is the plant where truly everything can be eaten, and that is next. Number 7 is the winged bean, which lives up to the promise that every part will feed you. A tropical climber, it throws out pods shaped like little four-winged stars, full of crunch, but the wonder is that the pods, the leaves, the flowers, and even the roots are all edible and rich in protein. Once it takes hold, it climbs like it means to conquer the fence, handing you new pods every few days, and being a bean, it feeds the very soil it grows in, drawing down nitrogen so your ground grows richer each season, not poorer. Let a few pods dry on the vine, and you have next year's seed for free. Your test: give it a strong fence and let it clothe it in food. But number 6 can drape a whole fence in fruit and come back for years, and that is next. Number 6 is the chayote, a climbing vegetable that behaves most like a fruit tree of all, also called the vegetable pear. It grows on long, vigorous vines that can swallow a whole fence in green, dangling with pale, crisp fruits that taste like a cross between a cucumber and an apple. And a single plant can give hundreds in one season. Here is the tree-like magic, for once planted, its roots stay alive underground and send up fresh vines every spring. So one plant hands you baskets of fruit for years without replanting. It loves the sun, forgives poor soil, and the more you pick, the more it makes, and the young shoots are good eating too. Your test: plant one whole sprouted fruit at the foot of a strong support and stand back to let it run. But number 5 is nearly impossible to kill. And for the gardener who wants food forever, that is the finest virtue of all, and that is next. Number 5 is horseradish, the warrior of the root world. Once this plant takes hold, it is almost impossible to be rid of, and for the gardener who wants food forever, that is the finest of virtues. Even the smallest scrap of root left in the ground after harvest will grow back into a whole plant, and it thrives on neglect, shrugging off pests and laughing in the face of frost. Its sharp, fiery root will wake up any meal and carries real goodness besides, and it wants no rich soil nor coddling, only a sunny corner to call its own. When you harvest, dig what you need and always leave a few roots behind, and that is your secret to a supply that never ends. Your test: tuck a root into a corner you do not mind it claiming for good. But number 4 bursts up every spring like clockwork for a decade, and that is next. Number 4 is rhubarb, a bold and handsome plant that looks like it belongs in a jungle yet grows happily in a cold backyard. With its great green leaves and deep red stalks, it is as striking as it is generous, and once it roots, it comes back every single spring, thrusting up new shoots ready to feed you, and it will keep on for 10 years or more if you harvest it kindly. The stalks are tart and tangy and full of goodness, grand in pies and jams and even savoury dishes, and the plant fairly thrives on being left alone. But mark this well, friend, only the red stalks are food, never the leaves, for the leaves are poisonous and must always go on the compost, not the plate. Your test: plant 1 crown in rich ground and take only a few stalks the first year. But number 3 multiplies underground so freely you will be giving it away, and that is next. Number 3 is the Jerusalem artichoke, sometimes called the sunchoke, and it is among the most underrated plants you will ever grow. Above ground it is a cheerful sunflower, tall and bright, but underground is where the wonder happens, in clusters of knobbly tubers with a sweet nutty taste somewhere between a potato and a water chestnut. Plant it once and you will never plant it again, for the roots multiply on their own, and you simply dig what you need and leave a few behind to come back thicker and stronger next season. It is tough as old boots, shrugging off drought and pests and poor soil, and it spreads so well you may find yourself pressing it on your neighbours, which is no bad thing, for that is how the best plants have always travelled, over the garden fence from one grateful hand to the next. Whatever you do, do not plant it anywhere you might later regret, for it does not leave easily once it has made up its mind to stay. Your test: plant a few tubers where you will not mind them settling in for good, but number 2 grows like a tree and feeds you for 20 years, and that is next. Number 2 is the tree collard, which folk also call perennial kale, and it truly earns its name. Picture a green that grows tall like a shrub, stays leafy all the year round, and hands you fresh leaves for years without a single replanting. Once it is established, it can live for up to 20 years, throwing out new leaves every few weeks, even when the cold has withered every other green in the garden. It is rich in calcium and iron, and the flavour is smoother and sweeter than common kale, less bitter and more earthy, fine raw or cooked. It asks only an occasional pruning to keep it giving, and it grows fast enough to make a living fence or a green privacy hedge besides, feeding you and screening your garden in the one plant. Think of it, friend, A green that stands like a small tree and hands you fresh leaves every few weeks for 20 years, even in the depth of winter when every other leaf has withered and gone. Your test: plant one and prune it now and then to keep the new leaves coming. And now, friend, we have arrived. Number one is the plant I promised you from the very first breath, the bed you dig once and eat from for 20 years. Number one is asparagus, and here is where I close the loop I opened with you at the start. It is the king of patience and reward, a planting that pays you back for 2 decades. You set it once, you tend it gently through that first season, and after that it becomes a living gift that returns stronger every spring, tall and elegant and heavy with tender green spears. The first year you wait, the second you begin to see its promise. By the third you are cutting fresh spears every few days, and here is the number I want you to hold, friend. A single asparagus bed, well made and kindly kept, will produce for 15 to 20 years without ever being replanted. The gardeners at the Royal Horticultural Society will tell you the same, that a good bed is the work of a moment and the reward of a generation. We have such a bed behind our own infirmary wall, set by a brother long dead before I ever took my vows, and I have cut spears from it every single April for 40 years. He never saw most of the harvests his spade made possible, and I think of him each spring when the first green tips break the cold soil. That is the strange grace of a plant like this. Friend, you set it as much for the years you will never see as for your own. Imagine it, 2 decades of the earliest, freshest food of the year, all from one dig of the spade. It loves the sun and well-drained ground, and once its roots go deep it endures heat and drought and neglect alike. Your test: this coming spring, dig 1 trench, set 1-year-old crowns, and resist cutting a single spear that first year, so the roots can build their strength. That is the bed that feeds you for 20 years, and now you know how to make it. So how did we ever come to garden the hard way, buying it all afresh each spring? It was not always so. Go back before the great seed trade grew up after the war, and every cottage garden leaned on faithful plants like these, handed over the fence from one family to the next. Then the seed houses learnt there was far more money in selling you a packet of annuals every single year, and in breeding clever hybrids whose seed will not come true, so you must always come back and buy again. The men who sell the seed had a fortune to make from your starting over, spring after spring. It was not a wicked plot, friend. It was no conspiracy. It was only money, doing the thing money does. And hear this plainly, your buying the same seed year on year was never ignorance on your part. You were sold a way of gardening that keeps you paying, and taught to think it the only way. The old plant once way was nearly lost in a single lifetime, your own, and simply by watching this you are taking it back. Here is what I would have you carry from an old monk who has kept the same beds for 40 years. A garden built on these faithful plants is not just less work, it is a kind of freedom. When your food comes back on its own each spring, given by plants your own hands set years ago, you are no longer wholly at the mercy of the seed rack and the grocery shelf. That is not really about vegetables at all. It is about being a person whose table does not depend on another man's supply, whose family eats if the trucks stop rolling. The brothers who tended these same beds and wrote down their ways for 800 years were not saving mere recipes. They were saving that independence hand to hand down the ages, so it would still be here, rooted and waiting for you. Plant one this year, and another the next, and in a few short seasons you will have a garden that wakes and feeds you on its own, the way an orchard does, asking almost nothing back for all that it gives. Now, do one thing for me before you go. Drop a comment below and tell me just 2 things. First, which of these 15 you will plant first, the walking onion that strolls across the beds or the asparagus that feeds you for 20 years? And second, tell me which faithful old plant already grows in your garden, the one that comes back every year without your asking. I read as many of your comments as these old eyes allow, and the patterns in them never cease to move me. Thank you for spending this time with me here in the garden, friend. Go in peace and look after yourselves.